The second agenda item is to consider the approval of the minutes of the Special Finance Committee meeting held on September 26, 2017.
So moved.
Can I get a motion? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 3, review September's 2017 monthly report. Brad, you want to go over that?
Certainly. You have in your packet and actually you had distributed earlier the September financial summary. That's the 5th month of the fiscal year. Some of the highlights in the revenue side, sales taxes were down just about $15,000 comparative to the same time last year, but we are still almost $160,000 ahead year to date. So we're about 3% ahead, and that's in keeping with our projections from budget. So so far so good. Home rule sales tax. I didn't note it in this cover narrative in the cover memo, but with the state's new budget for fiscal 2018, they included a 2% administrative fee for any sales tax that the Department of the Department of Revenue was collecting on behalf of local governments other than the regular 1% sales tax. So these numbers are actually reflecting that net of the 2% administrative fee, which also is reflecting down slightly for the month of 22,000, but yet ahead for year to date of about 18,000. There is legislation that has been proposed that would reduce that fee to 1%, but no action has been taken at this time.
Thank you.
Use tax for the month again. June clearly was a little bit slow compared to last year. Was also down 6,000 for the month, but ahead 5,000 year to date. Income tax continues to run off of expectations, with being $42,000 for the month and almost $100,000 down for the year to date. Property taxes are very much on track with expectations. No surprises there. Video gaming continues to move along. For the month, we received almost just shy of $29,000 in video gaming net revenue. It was about $10,000 more than it was a year ago at the same time, and it's about $49,000 ahead of last year. There are for that reporting month, there were 3 entities that had been licensed by the state but had not yet started operations, and 2 of the 3 have now since begun operations in the month of October, with the September reporting period. Motor fuel taxes basically break even for this year compared to last year, and about $14,000 ahead year to date compared to last year. Commuter parking, our utilization is down for the month of September approximately 10%, and year to date down about 2% compared to the prior year. You then have the series of graphic depictions of the key revenues and the next 2 pages, and then you have the comparison of revenue and expenses. And as I like to point out, the main thing that you should take away from the revenue and expense comparison is that the spread between the revenues and expenses has remained consistent or has become a little bit larger in the current fiscal year than the prior, which is good news. The trend line graphs, no particular surprises there. They continue to follow the trends as expected. And then the last things in the report package are some detail and the impact fees that we have collected on behalf of other governments through building permits, which is over $21.5 million. And the state's backlog of what they owe us basically right now is some utility bills. They've paid the remaining rent for the space that they had for the state police, and they are current on the income tax distribution. So that is the summary of the September report.
Okay, thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Okay, number 4 line item is review annual police pension report. So Brad, you're going to go over that, please.
Yes, you received a copy of the 2-page report from the Police Pension Board, which provides a short summary as required under state statutes in the pension code for an annual reporting to the board with regard to the activity of the pension fund. It provides a summary of its actuarial assets, and actuarial assets as of April 30th, 2017, the income expected for the upcoming year, the expenses for paying pensions and other obligations of the pension fund, and it also includes the levy request for the 2017 levy. And it provides some information regarding the investment returns comparative this year to the prior year. The actuarial asset rate of return is about 6.5%. The market value asset rate of return is about 9.6%, which is which that number is in excess of the actuarially assumed interest rate of 7%, which is good because that helps the actuarial funding of the pension fund over time. There are 76 participants in the fund currently, and about $3 million, a little more than $3 million is paid out to the beneficiaries each year. And the funding ratio is 74%, which is very respectable in the state of Illinois. And arguably, at that level, and as long as we continue to fund the pension fund as we are required by statutes, the fund will never go broke. So
that's a nice funding
never
ratio.
word.
Yeah, never, right? Okay,
so
great.
That pretty much summarizes the report. And again,
so to go with the pension report, let's number 5 is to discuss the 2017 tax levy.
Yes, and normally we typically are discussing the levy later in the year around December. However, I'm going to be on vacation during the time where we would normally discuss this, and I felt it was best we talk about it now while I'm around as opposed to later when I'm not. I distributed a memo that outlines the statutory dates that we have to meet in order to meet the requirements for the levy, and then as well as the recommended dates that is suggested to follow this year. The village has long had its own tax cap formula, which provides for determining the levy, or capping the levy rather, at the prior year's extended levy plus a factor for inflation plus a factor for new growth. That would produce a village levy request of $20,600,000. If we followed another option where we did not include inflation or new growth, and just basically levy the amount of the extended levy from the prior year, that would be $20 million, just shy of $20,200,000 for the village. Or option 1, outlined on the memo, is to do the same as last year, as $19,980,000. And if we followed the program that the board had established when they enacted the home rule sales tax, it was said that we would try to maintain the tax levy at that option 1 level for 5 years, and this would be year 4 of that program. The library has agreed that they are going to hold their levy flat to the same as last year, option 1, and they will actually be approving that at their meeting tomorrow evening. And but I got confirmation that that is the level that they are going at.
Okay.
And again, as required by the statutes, we have to make a determination. There's 2 things. One, we covered. We had to receive the request from the pension fund for the pension levy requirement first before we considered the levy. And then second is at least 20 days before we adopt the levy, we have to meet to determine what is the amount of the levy going to be to determine if it's going to exceed, if it's going to be greater than 5% of last year's extended levy, in which case we would have to follow the Truth in Taxation Act requirements of having a public hearing and a published, what they call a black box notice in the newspaper. None of the options that are outlined in my memo would trigger the Truth in Taxation requirements, because they all would fall below, would be less than 1.05% of last year's extended levy.
Okay. So based on the information you're given, you're recommending?
My recommendation is to hold the line with option 1.
Option 1, right? Okay, thank you. Any questions at all from trustees on the levy?
And that's what we've done the past couple of years, is held the levy flat.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Brad.
Good.
Go to the next step on that. Okay, number 6, discuss the RFP, the Oak Park Avenue train station, the coffee shop. I'm going to have Pat go over that.
Sure, good evening. What I'd like to do is just talk about some potential options and maybe just a little direction. In May, the lease is set to expire at the coffee shop there. We have Norm that's in the audience here and probably talk in the public comments, but since I've taken over as the assistant village manager, I've been working with Norm on some of the issues that we've had, infrastructure issues, different things like that. So I'm just looking for different options of how we want to proceed with this. If it's a new RFP, if we want to extend the current lease, potential upgrades and improvements, and then some sort of internal look at what we have there and an inventory of what our space is doing there. So it's a little loose in some of these options, but something needs to be done and some direction needs to happen to go forward. As I said, Norm will probably get up here and speak a little bit to it, but we've had some infrastructure challenges, particularly in the last few months, and that have impacted his operations there. So we have to do a little investigation of just see where we're at with it.
So the objective here is to, over the near future here, quickly kind of determine which one of these paths we want to go down.
Yeah, I would say we need to, I would say the next 30 days, decide on which path you want to go. Probably get Norm involved a little bit and get his feedback on it also. And with, he has inventory in the store there, so.
And with Norm's lease, there's, how many days do we have to give notice before the lease? Is it 90? Is usually?
I believe 90 days. Yeah.
90 days?
Yeah.
Okay. So we do have a little time, so.
Correct.
Over the next 30 days, we'll make a determination on what we want to do.
That is correct.
Okay. Any questions at all from the trustees?
I got a couple questions.
Go ahead,
so
Mike.
few times I've been there, it seems like it's well run and the staff is pretty friendly. Is that pretty much the consensus?
Oh, absolutely. We've had no issues as it relates to customer service there. Just recently, we've just had some challenges infrastructure-wise where things have gone out, and to try to address them. But unfortunately, it impacted his business because of that.
He's running a successful business as far as we know, right? He's making money, and
as far as we know, yes.
I think the big question comes in, Mike, is just what, some of the things that we have to do to get the facility to the level that he'd like to have. And I think that's what Pat's talking about, is some of the challenges right now that we have to kind of figure out, what we need to do.
So he as the leasee is saying, we want this to continue the lease.
I just think to run a business in a solid, fashion on a day-to-day basis, I think that's what Pat's saying, is we just got to look there. And then we got to make the determination is, his lease is up, we're going to renew the lease, all the things that kind of go with that.
I was just wondering what the plan is. It seems when I go in there to be a well-run, pretty decent business. I'm just trying to get a handle on what we're looking to do.
Yeah, right now we haven't made it, we just started talking about it. I think that's what Pat's really saying, is over the next 30 days, we got to make some determinations on that. I think we got to get a feel for what we do have to do to the building, what the cost of that is going to be, things like that.
We appreciate the early heads up on it.
What are the improvements that needed? Did we do the chillers or something on the?
Well, I think normal.
Last time we talked.
Right, I've come in on the tail end of it, but as Normal explained, there's space issues definitely there for running some of the operation that he's doing. So it's just addressing some of those concerns. Can we have Norm come up, maybe just?
Sure.
Yeah,
Norm,
that'd
you
be
want to
great.
come up and talk about it?
Answer your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, what kind of questions do you guys have?
Hi, Norm, how are you?
All right.
Is the kitchen too small? What is the space issue?
Does not possess one.
It's what?
Does not possess one.
Does not possess his kitchen.
No kitchen.
Yes, there's a
Okay.
warming oven.
That's it.
Yep. For that location to be viable for anyone, so you can RFP it and see what you get.
Everyone's
I
going to
re-
say the same thing?
Well, I'm sorry?
Everyone will say the same thing you're saying? It's on the
Um,
kitchen?
One sort of was done before, about 5 years ago, and that's what I saw in actuality. Some of the owners of other restaurants were invited in while I was under lease to take my spot when I didn't have a 90-day removal clause. It's very difficult to also do a business that is typically contracted out, if you're successful, a year when you have a 90-day removal. It's hard to operate in an honorable way and with integrity and offer contracts when at any time they can be removed essentially for no reason by the verbiage in my agreement, which is actually not a lease due to some tax discrepancies years past. And maybe it would be good for you guys to be able to look at some paperwork that's concerning that issue so you could be up to date on that. And you have pretty much most of that. If you'd like, you can give them
And
copies.
Norm, I did just ask for that, so we will look, we will look
That
at
will really help so
Yeah,
you would
we will look at
understand where I'm
that,
coming
just to
from.
understand what you do have today. So considering we're coming
Yeah.
in, similar to Pat, we're
Yeah.
coming in on this right now,
Cold.
so.
Right.
Right. So in order for this place to be viable and sustainable in any long-term fashion, not for me, for anybody, on your guys' behalf, it has to be able to be functioning as a professional restaurant or a coffee shop. And a lot of this has to do with the intention of what purpose primary that the village wants it to serve. So what do you want facilitated out of there? And I think it can't be several things simultaneously, sort of like have your cake and eat it too. You can't want to make profitability and have many other expectations that infringe on my profitability. So essentially like free work. I'll give you an example. For decorations, I do professional decorations. Do you agree or not, Donna? Because your sister does them too professionally. How do you like the job I've done the past few years? Yes. I've done the Halloween decorations in excess of a decade. And they do the Boo Bash at my place. It's about a $5,000 job, and I have to block out my business to do that. I give up income to do that for the community. And I recently, several years ago, took on the Christmas decorations as well. So when I want to do that, and I'm profiting you guys, you should look at all the previous incomes, and it's roughly $250,000 that you guys made off of me so far for the duration of time that I've been there. I'm doing $5,000 in pro bono work. All right, I'm not a professional decorator, but I do it twice a year for the last several years. And I mean, the communication is non-existent. I mean, it's just starting to come about here, but it's non-existent, and it has been for the whole time I've been there. Fragmented.
Norm, just for me being a new trustee, how long have you been there for?
Just shy of 15 years.
15 years, okay.
Wow.
And how many
3
agreements?
times.
Is it on the same agreement that you have right now?
No,
or has there
it is
been-
not. My
You've had a
agreement was
few?
taken from me 5 years ago. It is not a lease. It is a specifically, quote unquote, no lease, non-exclusive license agreement.
It is a license agreement because under
I
the
understand.
tax
Sales
codes, the property is tax exempt to us, but if we lease it for a commercial purpose,
We have to
it becomes taxable. It creates a tax bill that
Yeah.
somebody has to pay.
Right.
And so we went to a license agreement to avoid that tax issue.
Thanks, Brett.
So,
Some of the paperwork will help you understand that. And,
so can I ask a question? Where does this come from? Are you trying, did you bring it here to try to renegotiate the terms of your?
I brought this
It's not
here
a-
because
not
I've spent this long here, and I have every intention of spending double this time, which is about a full career before you die of a heart attack from 90-hour weeks. You know what I mean? But for any sort of communication tentative. I've attempted many times, and I have all the letters and stuff and meetings I had to try to get the very same things done, and it's never come to
But
fruition.
that's what brought this to the board, is your
Right,
plan to
because-
Plus the
get
lease
some of
is
these
coming
issues.
due. and-
The way that it is right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
if it continues on this path, I won't sign an agreement. I'll just go a different path. You know, I gave up my whole career to do this. I was in a medical field, nursing, paramedicine, firefighter. 9 years, I gave that up to do this. And I moved to this town because I love the town. And if you remember, you know,
Is it possible you could put like a list of the several things that you think need to be?
oh, I think we
Change
could
to
probably have a
make it
couple
viable?
meetings and get it tightened up in a matter of hours, honestly, because it's on my mind for beyond a decade. So it's not like I have to drum up the ideas.
Well, I think your success is our success.
So here's what we'll do, to make a promise to you. I will take the information, and we'll get a hold of you, have you come in, we'll sit down and be able to go over it.
That sounds
And then try to
fantastic.
get, within a timeline that makes comfortable
Yeah.
for you. So if there any decisions are being made, that it's beneficial to both sides.
I mean, at this point, I've always operated with contracts, always. It's very professional, and it's safe both for the customers and for myself.
Right.
I've done in excess of 2,000 banquets, 0 complaints, ever.
Okay?
Ever. So I have currently not operated with contracts. I'm merely penciling people in because out of fear of having to break a contract that I make. And I inform every person that's in my book, about 50 banquets currently, to the end of next year when my lease is up, or non-exclusive license agreement is up in May. I have stuff to December, maybe 60,000
Okay.
worth, but non-contracted. So it's a really poor way of operating a business, and it's really not in my benefit. But I do that out of honor and integrity because I don't want to give my word, because I feel as if this is not really going in any direction, and I'm glad I heard you guys say you want to find a direction. It's a good thing for me to spend any more time.
Yeah, like I said, I promise you that we will. It
Yeah.
was brought to me roughly 3-4 days ago. I think now that as soon as I get the information, I want to read it, and then we'll get you on the phone, bring you
Sure.
in, sit down and go through it.
I mean, we have till May, so it's not like it's
Yeah,
tomorrow.
but I'd
for
rather
sure.
make a decision in the next 30
Yeah,
days, so both
I agree.
sides are understanding to kind of what it is.
Yeah, we can
I
progress.
do agree with trustee, if you do have a list of things, it would be great when you came in, if you had those things, so we can talk through.
Seems like you need certainty on how long your time frame is so that you could book business in advance.
For me to make a list of things I think would be appropriate, I think that I need an intention that you want served.
I do.
A specific intention. Not one that changes every few years or within administration, which I've noticed. And some of the stuff that I have, I'll be able to present to you. You'll be able to understand where I'm coming from on
Okay.
that.
I appreciate your time today, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Norm.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, folks. Appreciate it.
So the game plan based on discussion number 6 is we'll come back in 30 days at the next Finance Committee meeting, have a chance to talk through kind of what we're thinking, and I'll have a chance to be able to meet with him and go through that. Pat will be working with me on it, so.
Appreciate that. That sounds like a
Okay.
great plan.
Any questions at all from the trustees? Before we go to public comment, just a couple things. Number one, our audit is in its final stages. I got a chance to look at the initial final stages of the audit over the last week. Preliminary, we should have a final audit probably, what do you think, Brad?
It's going to be a couple of weeks yet.
Couple of weeks, 2 weeks, it'll be done. Very positive results from it. So we'll finish up the audit. Second thing is our fraud assessment that we talked about back 5-6 months ago has started. All the data analytical work was done. Over the last 2 or 3 days, we've had a major amount of interviews done at the village. That process will take about another 30 to 40 days, and we'll be finished with that. We'll be able to come to the public with both the audit and the finals of the fraud assessment and be able to go over those with you once those are completed. So,
There may be some things that need to be discussed in closed session with the
Yep.
with the fraud assessment. However,
Okay. Yep.
Keep that in mind.
we will. Yep, thank you. Okay, any comments from the public? Mike?
Thank you. Oh, I haven't been here for a month. I missed you guys. I strongly came here in support of Norm. I wanted to thank him for coming. down to speak with you all tonight and get a discussion going. Specifically, the 4 options that were presented. I think, number 3, if I could give my direction as a tax-paying citizen, the potential upgrades and improvements, which I'm guessing between what Norm's going to lay out and what you guys are going to discuss. I would hope that, and it seems like you're leaning in that direction, but I'd like to put in my 2 cents as just someone who's frequented Cavallini's many times. I think it's an important part of the community. As Norm pointed out, it's been here for 15 years, and I've been going to it, a good chunk of those years, and certainly a lot more recently. And I've always found it to be a good institution to eat at on a Saturday morning, have nice political discussions and whatnot, or if I'm waiting for the train. So I hope Cavallini stays. I hope Norm stays to keep running it, and we make the necessary improvements to the facility for him to be a strong, viable business and a continuing part of this community. So and I wanted to just also note again that it was good to hear that we're $10,000 ahead in slot revenue. So again, Tinley Park, keep her spinning. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Just a quick question about the police pension. Has the percentage risen, say, over the last 10 years, Brad? Do you know how much has been funded?
It has been moving in an upward direction. It obviously dropped during the recessionary period as the markets also crashed, as well as the real estate market. But it has recovered, and it is moving in a positive direction.
Is there any plan in place to an expedited upward motion to get that fully funded?
You don't want to do that. I mean, the funding is solid. It's good. There's too much. I would argue there's too much focus put onto this 100% funding level. The main thing that you want to attend to is that you are making the contributions that are actually actuarially required under the statutes, which we are doing. We've actually contributed more money to the pension fund than has been required over the years, and the funding is continuing to move in a positive direction. The management, the police pension board manages the investments. The investments are performing at this time very well. That works favorably to move that percentage upward. But I would argue anywhere between 70 and 80% is really ideal. You really don't want to be much more than that, because you're at a point where as long as you're continuing to do what you're required to do, you're never going to go broke. You're always going to be able to pay the pension obligations that you need to pay.
I think it's important too, just from the village standpoint, just kind of give an idea of what your responsibility is under the pension.
I understand that part of it. I guess that's. And funny, it was you who said this to me one time, Brad, about a different subject, but we're not sure we want to use Chicago and/or Illinois as our example.
Well, those 2 examples are not doing what the statute requires them to do. They are not putting the money that they're supposed to be putting into the pension funds.
Right.
And that is where the problem lies.
Right, and I understand we are, and I think that's a good thing. I just think there should be some type of plan in place to get it to a higher percentage.
We don't control it.
That's my point.
It will get there over time, as long as I would argue what really drives the train is the investment return. If the investment return falls below and again, this is a moving target. It changes constantly.
Right.
Constantly changes. As long as the investment return is greater than 7%, we're going to make positive progress. If they don't, then the taxpayers of Tinley Park have to contribute more to the pension every year, and to make up the difference. And that's kind of what is driving the contributions, as well as new officers, which add to the liability.
So let's take in. Let's look at the possible police study results that come back. And again, I think you all know how I feel. I believe it's going to come back at 15 to 20 additional officers. That's going to affect, granted it's long term, but it is going to affect that pension. And I just think it's something as trustees and as staff that we need to seriously look at and consider prior to when it happens. It's inevitable that it's going to happen. Even if they don't come back with 15 or 20, it's going to be very close to that. And I think it's just something to remain fiscally responsible. That has to be something that has to be looked at in the near future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, can I get a motion to close the finance
So
committee
moved.
meeting?
Second?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'm next.
Michael's going, okay.
I'd like to call the Administrative and Legal Committee to order. Roll call, please. Commissioner Berg,
Present?
Commissioner Mangan,
Present.
and I, Commissioner Panino, am present. Consider approval of the minutes of the Special Administrative and Legal Committee meeting held on September 26, 2017. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A discussion of RFQ for agenda management with citizen participation. I think that's from the clerk's office. Does anybody want to address that?
It is. May I read the interoffice memo that we put out on the 16th of October?
Please.
Okay. In preparation for the 2019 fiscal year budget, a request for qualifications has been prepared by the clerk's office for the purposes of seeking a qualified firm to provide technology that can assist the village of reaching its goal to create an agenda/minutes management system that will include citizen participation as well. This system should include the following: ability to allow citizen participation in the final agenda packet via the village website, automated workflow system to prepare, track, modify, approve, and monitor the progress of agenda items, easy-to-use search function for items no matter where they exist in the agenda process, facilitate easy electronic posting and electronic communication using tablets, smartphones, and other electronic devices, ability to define both unique agenda templates for each meeting type, and lastly, the ability to facilitate timely creation of minutes. I would like to request the Administration and Legal Committee's approval to seek qualified candidates to provide technology that would assist the village in creating an agenda minutes management system that would include participation, citizen participation, excuse me. And I'd like to emphasize that not only will this give our system a much needed upgrade, it will also increase efficiency, eliminate a lot of staff hours, and of particular importance to me is allow citizens to comment on agenda items before the meetings happen so that board members can have enough time to research and address citizens' concerns. Deputy Clerk Laura Gaudette has done a lot of work with meeting with service providers. So at this point, I'd like to know if you have any other questions.
My question on it was, is there any other modules that are there besides just this piece of it, so the agenda minutes? Is there any other modules that we can get that would tie to other pieces that we can kind of drive more technology on?
There are, yes. Would you care to elaborate on that, Laura? Or?
Actually, our on-base Highland system now that we use for document management, we've been slowly expanding on, has an agenda management module. So there's many modules to it.
And that's the only thing I would like to do is if we're going down the road to do this, just to see what other modules it has, that we can maybe really take our technology within the clerk's office and really maybe get away from paper and everything else that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, to kind of look at what other modules they have and just to understand what we have the capabilities of having, you know, based underneath the companies you're looking at.
From some of the reviews of receiving the presentations on several of these over the years, more recently, that should definitely have it.
Okay, great.
That's the eventual goal, but then with every module, you have to consider there's training and the staff has to get acclimated, so it's a...
I would imagine, too, once the RFQ is done, we'd be able to ask questions of the potential qualified applicants of what they can do as far as additions to make our system better.
Correct. Are there a lot of companies that do this?
Do they have a bunch of software and each one? This is going to be taking you guys a long time, isn't it?
Actually, it should kind of streamline the process a little bit. There's a lot of different companies that do it. Some are better than others. The training, I mean, I don't think it'll take that long. It'll be the whole staff will be trained. Everybody who contributes to the agenda, which is about everybody in this room who's staff, will have to be trained on this. So that's where the piece might
Okay, thanks, Laura.
take a little bit.
So I assume you're looking for direction to, do I
I'll
have
make
a
an
motion?
approval to move forward with the RFQ.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is discuss appointments. I asked to put this on the agenda. I had a couple questions about some recent appointments. First off, I'd like to congratulate Pat Carr on his recent promotion. I've heard nothing but good things about the work you do, Patrick. I'd also like to ask you a couple questions. First off, have you resigned your position as EMA director?
No.
Are you planning to resign your position as EMA director?
No.
You aren't deceased?
No.
You haven't been absent from your post as EMA director?
No.
And in fact, you've been doing both jobs since May?
Yes.
And are you unable to serve as EMA director?
Well, I suppose.
You've been doing both since May, right?
Correct.
So you can continue to do that? At least until,
Trustee Panito, can
if I got a question, I'll ask you.
I? Okay.
Do you plan to keep both positions, or do both positions at least until it can be publicly advertised, or an internal candidate can be groomed and promoted?
I'm assisting right now to keep things running there, yes.
So you can and will do both until we could publicly post and promote a candidate from internally? Yes? Okay. And in your current position as assistant manager, will you be in charge of the public safety functions of the village?
Administratively, the plan is that they'll report to the assistant village manager.
Pat will, or you'll do the public safety part, and the manager will do the building and planning and economic development part?
Correct.
And that includes EMA, your part?
Correct.
And does the village have the technology and people in place to allow you to do both jobs without interruption?
Yes.
Did you create a succession plan?
Yes.
Could you give me any details of that plan?
Part of the process when I came involved with the 911 Center back in 2012, we reorganized the department. We promoted 2 individuals to a operations manager and a quality and training manager, 2 able-bodied people, Lisa Cordum and Jackie Romano. We also established 3 lead supervisors who've been, attending classes and various professional development courses. And just recently, Lisa Cordon became a registered public safety leader, allowing her to run a 911 center. That was the intent of our plan, as her and I discussed, during that period. So.
Would there be any cost savings working with that plan?
You mean on not, if there's
Well,
not another?
Your plan for succession versus any other plans?
Well, if you don't hire another, department head director, yes, you'd have a cost savings.
And about how much would that be?
Approximately $100,000.
Okay. Do you think there's a need to immediately review applicable federal, state statutes, ordinances, policies, procedures, and provide guidance on coordinating and updating department practices to be consistent with current national best practices?
Well, that's done every day. I mean, we report to the county and the state. We're an accredited agency. If there are any changes, we're notified by the county and the state. We talk to the county a few times during the week, the state weekly, federal government by submitting our reports and giving updates on the status of our organization.
Does anybody else on the board have any questions, or on the committee? I'd just like to read the code that the recent appointment, I'm not even sure if it is an appointment, because I believe offers are being drafted and haven't been presented yet, but this is what the code that the appointment was made under says. In the event of absence, as we know he's not absent, he's right here, resignation, he said he hasn't resigned and doesn't plan to, death, obviously doesn't apply, or inability to serve of the coordinator, the village president, or any person designated by him or her shall act as, or shall be and act as coordinator until a new appointment is made as provided in this section. This is clearly designed for an emergency. If a person leaves, dies, it's not designed for promotions. Promotions is what we have here. Again, there's no absence, there's no resignation, there's no death or inability to serve. Therefore, this appointment is invalid. I believe we should, wherefore I'd make the following motions, and I'd be looking for a second. Motion number one, I direct staff to halt or rescind any offer from being presented to any candidates. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Number two, I direct the attorney to instruct the mayor that the administrative and legal committee has deemed his appointment to be invalid. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bottom line, as I said, this succession plan was ignored or wasn't followed, and I believe the code that this appointment was made under was inapplicable. I believe the code was meant for emergency situations, not to be used when an employee is promoted. Depending on what happens going forward, I believe the village could potentially be at risk of litigation from internal candidates or external candidates. There needs to be a means to double check that the rules governing appointments are followed before a problem occurs. Wherefore, I'd make the following motion. That motion would be to direct the attorney to draft an amendment to all ordinances governing appointments to require prior approval of the village board. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's all I have on that issue.
You got any comments, Pat, on that?
I'm sorry? Did you have something you wanted to add?
Just one point, Trustee Canino.
Okay.
There is a provision in your personnel manual about dual employment that we may have to deal with based on those motions. I think I cited it in a memo that I sent you guys today, but I believe there's a provision that says you can't hold two jobs at once automatically. It was also my understanding, based on conversations with the manager, that is how that they follow that provision when somebody's promoted or anything like that. The position is automatically vacated, and so I think that's where a lot of this started.
This confusion and misunderstanding started.
Not saying it can't be changed, and that's my point. And I believe in that personnel code, there's a provision that says, there can be an exception to that if the board finds it necessary. So I just want to caution you of that provision. Want to bring it to light to you guys. I'll update you guys on that. If there's a further action you would need to take, I'll let you know what that action is.
Thank you. And I guess number 5 is kind of a companion section. I don't think anything
Are you
further
looking
needs
at,
to be
are you
done.
making any suggestions on that, Pat, or what, I mean, Mike, are you, what's the,
Basically, I think that as far as section 32096 goes, I would assume that that would come in with that third motion that we made before for the
I
attorney
just
to
want to make
review
sure that
any
that's what you were,
ordinances. And
that's what you were doing there.
right, and as it'd have to, I'm assuming, come back to the full board or us
It would have to.
before it could go any further. But at least we've got a starting spot, and we could kind of firm up some of this stuff. And receive comments from the public.
Well, I wanted to commend you, Trustee Panito, just now. Very, very, very thorough. I guess, you know, laying it all out in a very clear manner as to what Pat Carr, obviously being alive, apparently not resigning, et cetera, et cetera. I think obviously the issue in question is we may have conflicting parts of the code that obviously Councilor Connolly, I'm sure, is going to be tasked to address here. You know, I believe the mayor citing one part of the code that I believe that you just referred to in the dual holding of jobs thing, which I believe Pat Carr's been doing a pretty good job in both roles, so I don't, but these things need to be clear, you know. So, you know, I think there's a lot of things in the code, and whether it be, you know, the legacy code or this, that, and the other code, there's lots of stuff in the code that needs to be revisited. And, you know, sometimes it takes something like this to address it. I'm glad that we are. We want the code to be as clear as possible because, as we're always told by Paula, the code is the code, you know, and the code's the book that we all go to, and we all expect everyone up here to play by the code and the employees to go by the code. And if the code's in conflict, then we need, you know, a decisive resolution so there's no ambiguity. And I believe that you're starting down the road on that. I think the further thing is maybe going forward, you know, what you're saying, I believe what you mentioned was all appointments, you know, have to go through the board no matter what scenario, whether, you know, like this like emergency provision, like is what you're basically referring to as like an emergency provision, correct?
Well, what I'm saying is this isn't an emergency. There was a succession
right.
plan. We should have had an option of whether to do the
And I'm
succession
going to
plan
offer some unsolicited advice, you know, to the gentleman that usually sits there, that perhaps that's the best way to go with these, you know, that everything goes through the board, you know, and not a consent agenda item, but I think we've addressed, I have to go back and what you guys did. Right, and I don't know if I ever actually thank you for that, because I did miss that meeting, and I wanted to, you know, thank you guys for you know, solidifying what we can do under the consent agenda. But, you know, I think transparency is always the best approach. Should go to the board, committee, a board, you know, we all vote on it, you know, and if there's any ambiguity, when in doubt, just go to the board. It's not like you guys don't have meetings basically every week at this point, either a committee one or a board one.
Mike, I fully expect that when the new recommendations for the appointment ordinance comes through, it will include an emergency exception, which I believe was supposed to be happening here. However, this just wasn't an emergency. This was a promotion. It was never contemplated that under these circumstances we'd have to hurry up and appoint somebody.
I think the individual that was appointed is someone that would be qualified and could do it. I just, you know, I can see it from your point of view that should go through the process.
I have no, it's not about the person. It appears to be a misunderstanding.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I'm glad you took this opportunity to explore this, you know, because I think that the individual in question could definitely do the job. I just wanted to thank you that we're now on the road for getting this to be much more clear. And I think when in doubt, let's have stuff go through a committee and have it be a proper agenda item and have everybody vote on it so there's no questions going forward. I would always ask that as your advice. When in doubt, let's do it that way. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Trustee Panito.
Thank you.
I just want to thank Trustee Panito for all the points that you made, and Trustee Mangan and Trustee Berg. Thanks, because this is one of the first meetings I was at that I think everybody felt spoke independently and thought it out and not just moved on with some straightforward thinking like somebody else wanted. So thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. Man, I didn't think I'd be up here so soon. Hi, Brett. I understand the emergency part. I really do, and I think that's a good thing to put in. But at the same time, for an appointment in an emergency, to me, it should be temporary if you're going to go this route until the person's vetted. Just like the person that's coming up, were they vetted? There's a succession plan. You know, being a manager of 6 for 30-odd years, you have to have a succession plan. And it's not fair to them either, because especially if they're qualified. You know, ever since 9/11, you know, Homeland Security has meant something different to me. It doesn't mean the same to everybody. But I want to know, Pat's, I can't swear on TV, but that you have my back if there was an emergency. And I want to make sure who's ever in this position has their background checks, that they're vetted, that they can do it, that they have the correct Homeland Security, that they can get the proper grants through NIMS. I just think all that has to be taken into consideration, not just that part of this that the person could do, and then put them in a position of such authority that we really need in this town. I just can't see it. So please take that into consideration, that when you appoint somebody in an emergency, maybe it's just temporary while things can get vetted and background checks are done. So thank you.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion to adjourn the administrative committee?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
I'd like to take this opportunity to open the special meeting of the Economic and Marketing Committee at a little bit late, I think. 6:55. I'd like to consider the approval of the minutes of the Special Economic Development and Marketing Committee held all the way on August 1st, 2017.
So moved.
Thank you. I'd like to discuss the new village website, and I think Ms. Franping is going to take over on this one.
Yes,
Exciting news.
We have a microphone issue here, we just noticed, so I will do my best to talk as loudly as I can. I would like to provide for you an update on where we are with our new village website redesign. Quick timeline for you. We started this process back in March of 17, and we are right now at about this spot right here where we have just finalized the design and are in the process of migrating the information that we have on our existing website over onto the new website. What I'd like to do is show you what we're talking about for the design of the new page. Up here a little bit. Is, of course, under our new branding flag, would be branded with our new colors. And we've got our tabs up at the top for government, residents, business, community, visitors. One of the things we especially like is that how do I function? So somebody doesn't have to think too hard about what they're looking for. They can simply click that and say, how do I pay my bill? How do I get information on events? How do I apply for a job? Whatever, take them right there. We have these photos in here we'll be rotating through. We will put a special emphasis on music for our photos that we have. And then we've got our tabs. Right now, through our analytics, we've identified the top 6 tabs that we know our residents and businesses are looking for. So you can see those listed down here. We do have the ability to have those rotate through as well. If you need 6, 8, 10 of them, we staff have the ability to modify that. From there, you go down to a news section. We'll have our top news articles. We'll be adding some visual interest with some photos. Again, usually we have more than 3 or so news articles at a time, so these will be rotating through as well. So there'll be a lot of movement on the site as we proceed. From there, you'll see a village calendar. So we've got our top 5 events rotating through. There'll be a calendar with all things listed that are both community events, village events, special events, music-related events. All of those will be populated by date. And we've got our indicator on where we are located, as well as our brand promise and information about the village and brand, and then a message on the mayor's pointer. That is a quick design for you. From there, I would like to show you a sample interior page. We've got right here the sample police department page. The idea is that each one of these pages will be more or less a virtual department within there. So you'll see information on the police department. Basically, we'll give an overview, but it'll possess a lot of links inside of it, things that can get you, it'll be somewhat intuitive what not only what the police department does, but the type of information you'll be looking for will be contained in links, as well as a full-on listing on the down the left column here of all the links that are related to that department. In the case of the police department, they're looking for some buttons too. So we'll have access to each one of those. And then I will show you what the site is looking like right now. This is very much under construction, so here. I would like to call special attention to this light amplified page. One major change that we'll be making this on this site is that we will be linking to all things music in Tiffany Park. So somebody will be able to hit the light amplified page, and they'll see information on, where you can find live music, or where you can find music-related things here in the village. We also I'd like to note for you the type of things that this will be a 3-column, almost an outline format, so that's already been modified. But you'll get a flavor for the type of things that we listed under each one of the tabs. So you've got for government, for residents, for businesses, for the community, and for visitors. It will be a responsive site, and so our intention here is to, once we get this to a good point, we do want to send out a test to our residents through the community email and ask them for feedback on it. We'll have cross-training done on all marketing staff so that we're able to manage it more in-house than we are right now. That is a quick rundown.
Very good. When is the date?
We are looking for a soft launch in December, and then right around the first of the year, we'll do a full launch.
New year, new website. Thank you, Donna.
Exactly.
Hey, I've got one quick question. That
Sure.
first page, you could click on the dates on the calendar, and it would tell you what events are planned for that day?
Does that now?
Does it? Yeah. Is there any way you could put the weather with it too, just so people know it's going to be a nice day and you get it all in one place so they'll come here? Well,
We have the weather now. A lot of people rely on their phones for that type of information now, so they're less inclined to come to the site, but we can certainly do a feed on that if that's something that the community wants.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 4, discuss downtown incentive grant plan. I think Patrick's going to discuss this one.
Yeah,
As soon as we get up and running.
PowerPoint.
Grants are good. Patrick and Ellen, are you both participating here? Okay, thank you.
Back in June, the mayor asked us to come up with some different ideas that can help out downtown, but the focus being more of a pilot program for the rest of the Tiffany Park. We invited all the ideas, staff got together and brainstormed what we currently have in place, what we could have in place, and where the focus should be. And we want to focus on the businesses, the actual buildings, and the corridor as a whole. First, we'll start with the businesses. Somebody had the idea to come up with an SBDC center, Small Business Development Center. These are federally funded. There isn't one currently on the Chicago South Side. I think the closest one might be Governor's State. I think there used to be one in this area, so we're working with the local community college to see if we can get another one of these back. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for businesses where you go in and get some mentoring if you're a current business or if you just have an idea for a business. It's more of a mentoring educational piece that we could get. Another thing is SCORE mentoring. I think right now there are SCORE mentors over at South Suburban Community College. We've been speaking with the local colleges and with the chamber of possibly housing a SCORE mentor either here at Village Hall like once a week or maybe over at the chamber. It's just a place where you can go, and if you have say you need help with social media or strategic planning or financing, they can match you with a SCORE mentor. Most of them are retired executives. However, I personally am a SCORE mentor. They drop me on to help out with the social media side because some of the seasoned retirees aren't as good at social media. But it's a really good free resource. It's a volunteer network. Anybody can just Google SCORE and you can see where the closest utility is, but it'd be nice if we had that either at Village Hall, maybe at the SVDC, or even at the Chamber. Another thing that we've got going on right now, I believe she just started this week, it's our Business Retention Expansion Specialist. We really want to have a focus on the downtown first, but we have Renee, say hello.
Hi.
She just started this week, and so if you get a phone call from the village that somebody wants to come out and meet with you and your business, she's going to be doing a survey and actually providing some of the tools that we have to our local businesses and really finding out if the local businesses are planning to expand, and if they're not, what are the barriers? Because we really need to remove the barriers for the expansion and take these tools out and find out what our local businesses need to really get going. The next one is a program that's currently that we have. It's our interest buy-down program that has already been in place. This is one of the tools that Renee can have whenever she goes out and about to help out get a lower interest rate if financing is one of the issues that's keeping expansion from happening. Another one are SBA loans. These are federal loans that are available by some banks. There's one close by. It's also currently available that Renee can also have in her toolbox. This one does not exist yet. It's a revolving loan fund. This is where we're going to get, hopefully, talk our local banks into setting aside some money. The mayor wants to hold a business breakfast and to see if we can get the local banks to set aside some money to create a revolving loan fund. And so what we're thinking is whenever you go into the business to try to get a loan from a bank, they want a certain amount of money down. And so you have a gap. And so if we can do a combination of using the revolving loan funds, maybe the SBA loans, along with the interest buy-down, you can do a blended financing in order to get over some of that down payment that the banks are requiring to help out with your coverage. I'm not sure how long this will take, but we're working with the mayor's assistant right now to get that business or the banker's breakfast set up. The next thing is the buildings. Sign grants. We have a sign grant currently in place. We'd like to add some design guidelines. That's something that Ellen's been working on. Right now, there's those will be for the sign grant and for the facade grant, which I'll show next. But it's just making a little bit more pedestrian-friendly signs that are currently along Oak Park Avenue. A lot of our signs that you see if you're driving by at a certain mile per hour, they're kind of alongside the building, and you're not going to catch it unless you're at a stoplight. So if we get them kicking out a little bit more, make them a little bit more visible for our businesses, something we can do a matching 5,000 grant to assist with. The other one's a facade grant. This is one that we currently have in place, but there are really no design guidelines. So we'd like to get some design guidelines to go along with the facade grants. Keep it in place for what it is. Sprinkler grants. This is a new one, along with the ADA grants. We've had a couple people interested in going to some of the buildings on Oak Park Avenue, but once they got in there and started had an inspection and realized what they had to do to bring the building up to code, it kind of priced them out. And so once they got priced out, we thought, well, is there a way that we can help offset that cost? So either it has to do with bringing things ADA compliant or helping offset the cost of the sprinkler grants. We thought it might be a good incentive to help out with the interior building. The other one, this is, I don't know, there's not too many different villages that are doing this, but there are some around. It'd be a retail grant for certain retailers that we really want to see in Tinley Park. So if it's music related, maybe another tap room, a winery, distillery, who knows, but different retailers that we could try to lure into Tinley Park. And prime example of this would be Springford Hall, where Cardinal Fitness was. The whole thing's wide open right now. It'd be nice if we can say, if we can get a certain retailer like a music shop, if we went in there, we could help offset the cost of building out the infrastructure of the inside to help out with the build-out costs. Other than that, you got your corridor. Some of these buildings are past saving, so we need to really identify which ones have gotten that far and maybe increase our demolitions to allow room for growth of other properties. The other one is the code amendments. I mean, we talked about codes earlier. We play by the code. We've had some people interested in going to certain buildings, but the codes have been prohibited. They wanted to go in and do commercial into a commercial building, but the way that some areas are set up, if you spend over 50% of what the property is currently assessed at, it has to be residential. And these are commercial buildings. So we'd like to do some kind of amendments to the code to encourage commercial development in those areas and not necessarily discourage it. Another thing that we're looking at is revising the districts themselves. You've got the downtown core, neighborhood general. Maybe these aren't in the right areas. This is something that staff is also looking at to identify to see if we can move some things around to encourage developments. Wayfinding we'll go over a little bit later on, but as you'll notice if you're driving down Harlem Avenue, there are some smaller signs that say downtown this way. We'd like to make those more prominent, so maybe we can capture some of our visitors to the amphitheaters and direct them downtown afterwards with some larger signage. I think Wayfinding can help out a ton with that. And then there's landscaping. If you're going down Oak Park Avenue, I think the public side, there's some really good landscaping going on. Private side, some areas are awesome, some not so much. So maybe we can help out with the small landscaping grant that can offset that. The combination of all these, we prioritized 5 of them to get your feet back on tonight. The grants, the full written programs are in your packets, and I'll turn it over to Ellen to go over what feedback we're actually looking for. And all of this has gone through our ECC and the Main Street Commission, so what you've seen on here now are their recommendations.
Madam Chair, would you mind if I step to the microphone?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Please.
Sure.
So, it's just easier to see you all and for everyone to be able to hear me. Thank you. So as Patrick said, the mayor had brought this to us and asked us to look into all of these programs, and so we dove into 5 of them right away, and this whole playbook. And there's some feedback we'd like to get for you. To make it easier for you, I did put this one slide on your in front of you so you can refer to it to talk. And then we created, it was in the packet tonight, I think it was online, this summary sheet with each of them across each other. I think it'll be easier to look at it. And I don't know that we need to discuss every single element on every single program, but I just wanted to get a little more in depth in terms of each program, what the intent was and what the terms could be. And we'd like to talk about the intent of each program, the dollar matches, and the process, I think, are the 3 most important things. So the sign program itself, originally the Main Street Commission had approved a blade sign program 2 years ago, and I understand it was never implemented. What we're suggesting here is to expand that a bit, and first off, the Legacy Code calls blade signs projecting signs. So we're kind of switching over to the projecting sign that projects out from the building. So if you hear me use the term blade or projecting, it's the same type of signage. And what we're suggesting here is that beyond just those projecting signs from the building, we also allow other types of signs to be incentivized through this grant. And that would be lettering on the windows, which are very effective as you're walking down the street, a freestanding sign, so you think of a pole in the front yard, and then you've got the sign hanging from a chain. And then attached sign, which is a projecting sign when you're on a building 3 stories or more. So what we're suggesting here is that we expand the uses, and $5,000 is what was recommended a couple years ago. We're leaving it at that. And they would have to conform to design guidelines, and businesses participating in this would agree to remove non-conforming signs. That's how it's proposed at the moment, and obviously a policy discussion for the board to consider. Folks can put these signs up without any incentives, but if our goal is to start to change the character of the district, the incentive can help take the sting out of removing a non-conforming sign. Any thoughts on the sign program? Right now I'm calling it Main Street Sign Grants. It originally had come to you as a blade sign grants.
So the Main Street, they've approved this, and they like the blade sign?
The Main Street Commission looked at all of these at their meeting last week, and we had very enthusiastic support of all of the programs. Yes, they liked the addition. So the same questions I'm asking you tonight, they agreed that all these other uses should be added in. They liked the non-conforming signs being removed. I will say that they felt the sign code itself needs some updates, and they wondered if we should hold on and not even implement this until the sign code is changed. Come this winter, Paula and Stephanie will be looking at the Legacy Code, and they will be looking at the sign code.
Great.
Okay.
I just like to say, I think this idea of a playbook is a great idea. I like the idea of helping businesses comply with the fire codes. People have been complaining about that for years. It's keeping businesses out. Updating signage is great. Facade improvements for existing businesses is great. Anything that attracts retail is great. The 4-season landscaping is great. I'd like to see maybe some sidewalk widening if there's any way to do that. Assisting independent startups, great. The question I've got, though, and I'm assuming none of this is set in stone at this point?
Correct.
Okay. Is this like a federal grant, or is this money that the village is coming up with?
This would be funded through either the general fund or a TIF fund. These would all be TIF eligible projects. We think that we wouldn't have money to start it until next budget year, so it'd be something that you would get into in your budget discussions.
So we'll talk about it in the budget. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate the hard work. Some of these are things I think probably needed to happen down there for quite a while.
The Main
See if
Street
we get the money
Commission
for it.
totally agreed with you. They were really excited, I will say that. And I will say that if a business wanted to do a project that was beyond any of these suggested amounts, if it was in a TIF district, you could always do a TIF redevelopment agreement, or you could do a sales tax rebate that's authorized by state statute, you know, to a home rule community. There's other ways that you could find to help at a larger scale.
What kind of money are you talking about to run this program? I thought I saw $350 and something I got the other day.
Yeah, well, I set out a lofty goal to be able to do 10 of these a year with like a 20-20 plan, try to do 20 by year 2020. So if we had 350 in theory, we could do 10 a year.
How would you decide who to?
It would go before Main Street Commission, and then it would come all the way up to you guys. So you guys get to vote one way or another on who gets what. And so the question we really need to know, though, is how many of these programs could one business get? Because like in theory, if somebody came in and did landscaping facade, should it just be like one per business?
If you're putting this on the website, you might want to talk about the 7 Bs and 7 Cs too. You might be able to do some 7 Cs down there.
Yes.
It's a great starting spot. I didn't mean to interrupt the presentation. Just
That's okay.
wanted to do it all at once, so I didn't say, okay, science good, you know, and just get it over with.
You know, Trustee, one of the things that you asked is the process, and right now we had envisioned everything would go through the Main Street Commission and eventually to the Village Board, probably through this committee, and then have an ordinance. I would suggest to you, just from my experience in other communities, that some of the smaller grants, you might want to just speed it up. Like landscaping, for example, is for $1,000, and it's a very technical review. You have the village landscape architect review it, and it meets or it doesn't meet, just goes to the Main Street Commission. But that's for you to decide if you want everything to come through via ordinance. And I can understand the wish to. That gets into Patrick's comment, though, will there be any limitations on one property? You know, is there a cap?
That's the part that I'm just trying to get my arms around, you know, is
I think the devil's
you want to expand it, and you want to give the opportunity to a lot of people, and there's only going to be so much funds that I think we're going to be able to do. But the key element here is some of those buildings really need the key money to make them happen. And I think if we can make them happen, it just transforms that whole area down there. So I'd like to have a little more time to kind of go through it and just get a feel from a bigger picture. I think the ideas are great. I think there's some really good opportunities. I think the banking piece with the banks, I think that's an opportunity that can happen that I think would be very positive. I do agree, though, that landscaping, you know, you can transform things pretty quickly on that type of situation.
Fire, not so much.
Right.
So I'll just go through quickly some of the changes. The facade program is also in place right now, and we're making some suggestions here to remove routine maintenance, remove the just brickwork and tuck pointing and stuff that's actually routine. I added sandblasting too, because you should never sandblast old brick buildings. That's the historic preservationist in me. You're welcome. We did add signs and facade graphics and front yard landscaping. That came from Dennis at Cousins. He said, oh, could I do an outdoor patio? And so we added we're suggesting that you add front yard landscaping in the facade as well as a potential use. And then we also added strengthened. It was referenced, but a little vaguely, the fact that it could be used for construction of space that would bring a building to the front setback line. The Legacy Code, as you know, is a form-based code which says bring everything up to the sidewalk to create that activated retail environment. And so we thought that the building additions in the front yard should be an allowable use. So, and again, if it's greater than a $35,000 match, a $70,000 project, you might have to go to a TIF redevelopment agreement.
How much of this do we get today based on the program today? I mean, under the program that we have today under the facade?
How much activity?
Yeah. That's what I thought. I mean,
we've had a fair amount of activity over years, but recently not too much.
Okay.
How's that been funded, Brad?
That's been funded either a variety of things basically through the budgetary process and allocation of the resources. Sometimes from TIF, sometimes from other sources.
And just for my understanding of it, was it always 35?
It's always been a maximum of
35,000. Okay. I just want to understand that.
So the fire code, and we actually think we should add ADA in there as well, because those are the two most expensive things that are triggered when you have to bring a building up to code. We put the $35,000 in there. So I'd like to know if the board feels we should combine that or do a separate program for ADA improvements. But that could be as simple as putting a ramp up to a building, changing a grade of a parking lot. They can be expensive, but the ADA code is a federal code. You know, we have the Illinois Accessibility Code. It's not a zoning code. It's something there is no variance from, and buildings need to comply. So.
And do we have a lot that are not ADA compliant right now?
The older buildings are usually not.
10 maybe? Not that many?
Oh.
You have an idea?
EDA-wise, I mean, the fire code we mapped out, there's quite a few that need sprinklers, but as far as EDA, we haven't mapped those out.
We have not mapped it out.
Is the biggest part of the EA the bathrooms? I mean, is that what we're finding with most of the buildings?
It's accessibility.
Just the wider areas for wheelchairs.
Because the bathrooms are a full-fledged change.
It's door openings.
Yeah, yep, okay.
Well, maybe we should separate those two. Sounds expensive to me. What's that, Mike?
You can't get an occupancy permit without being up to the fire code, but you get an occupancy permit with the ADA, or do you have to have that?
No, you have to have.
Do you?
Yeah.
Triggers.
With the new piece. That's what, I know with the new building, with the new.
The ADA has a monetary trigger, similar to what they talked about earlier, that if you expend a certain percentage of the value of the property, you have to do it. You have to do it. You have no option.
So we'd have to look at what that is and what would you get the most bang for your buck on.
The biggest question I have is just the two together. I think, you know, if you split them out, we just got to try to see how we best fit this into one plan. And these are the two biggest components as far as from an expense standpoint.
Right. And some of them, if they're too far gone,
and that's the part that I want to
understand. They become a residence.
Is if we have these buildings, you know, what is the amount of money you put into it compared to, you know, the value and all the, I mean, that's the part I'd like to kind of get my arms around a little bit better. Is, you know, if we spend X dollars on the building, we want to make sure that building stays and, you know, is able to do the things that we want it to do over time.
Yeah, I've been working with our GIS folks. One, they've mapped out, Dan Reardon gave me a list of buildings down on Oak Park Avenue that have sprinklers, those that don't, and those that we have a 5-year retrofit agreement with. So the fire department, when someone buys a property and they have to bring it to code, they will create a 5-year agreement with them so they can save up and get the work done. So we're going to map that, and I've also was working with them to take the Cook County data, and Brad's been helping me just to look at values so we can get a feel. And honestly, Trustee Mangum, I don't know how to handle that. Is it a ratio of value? At a certain point, do you say, no, it doesn't make good sense? I don't know the answer to you yet, but it's something we've been thinking about.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We need to investigate a little further on that.
Yeah, and I'd like to be able to think about that a little bit too.
Yeah.
We do have some average costs of fire improvements. The range is from $260 a foot to $1,120, I think it was, when you're retrofitting. When you're doing new construction, it's $2 to $3 a foot. It's the retrofit that is more expensive. And on a couple buildings, they've made some modifications where they've been able to bring a water supply into the building. They've changed this. I think that he's working with building owners to create creative solutions, is what I'm saying. Jim Fuentes' building was one. It was too expensive to tap through underneath the street, and so they created an alternative scenario that creates a fire sprinkler system. On one of the policy questions on this is, should the retrofits, those buildings already agreed upon to sprinkle, should they be eligible for the grants? Something for you to think about.
How many do we have today?
Yeah, let's.
I do have that list, and I'm sorry I don't have
That's
it with
okay.
me.
Can you
We
just
can
let me
bring
know?
it back.
Yeah, let me know.
Okay. And then that's another one in terms of it's very technical for agreement. And so if you would think about the review process, we'd appreciate input on that and direction. Okay. So the Amplify grant, looking for a musical name, is set up as a forgivable loan, I'll call it. And the whole point is to attract targeted retail to really build the destination downtown that the Village Board is dedicated to. And it would be available as proposed here for existing businesses expanding 20% or greater, or bringing in new businesses. They would all be sales tax producing type. I first saw this type of program created in Elmhurst about 20 years ago, and it was probably the #1 thing that turned their downtown around. They were able to go from a downtown with almost no retail left in it to a very significant destination retail, and they kind of set the bar on this grant program. But because it's a little risky, you might be dealing with startup businesses, there's some extra layers of requirements for it. You'd need a 3-year minimum lease for first floor retail, and the Main Street Commission was very excited about this one actually, and one of the first things they said is, how are we going to vet them? Are they going to have to do a business plan? Are they going to meet with the Small Business Development Center? They were really excited about this. They wanted to know though that we had a definite vetting process, and so in this one we might even want to have a review committee that includes a banker, includes a village board member, includes some, Patrick is economic development, just a more rounded committee looking at these, because they could be riskier. But if successful, can really change the retail environment and how much time you spend downtown shopping and dining and just being with friends. The Four Seasons grant, actually the mayor had asked for that, and I based this off a program I had created when I worked for the city of St. Charles, and it's based on the premise that you often hear you need a continuous row of buildings in a downtown. If you've got a building missing, it's an empty tooth, and you're like, oh, is there more shops past that? You want to have that continued rhythm going down the street, and it's called the street wall. And landscaping at the front line can also continue that rhythm and make a feel, create a feel for an entryway. It's a gateway to the downtown shopping areas. Because downtown sits, and Oak Park is the downtown, it's the central business district, and it sits in a greater fabric of the community. And that means it sits in homes. And so you want these properties to be pleasing as well and to contribute to the feel that you're somewhere special. You think about the big pink flower baskets we had this summer and just how they added to the feel of downtown. That's what landscaping can do. So we suggested here $1,000 for homeowners on the private side of the line, and we're suggesting it should be salt-resistant trees and perennials, things that are four-season grasses. They stay, and there's always some sort of interest throughout the year. And then we suggested $5,000 for commercial buildings similar to the sign grant. So again, improving the aesthetics of our commercial properties here. So that's the detail. I would appreciate, and I know Patrick as well, and Donna, we'd appreciate any other thoughts you have, any suggestions, things you want us to investigate.
Would the Amplify be on new construction? Ever? The Amplify retail forgivable loan could never be used on new building?
It would. It could be used for the build-out of an existing or a new building. The point is to outfit a small retail shop, you'll start at $75,000 for your merchandise, just for your inventory. And so you get into a cash flow situation immediately. So the premise behind these buildings were if you can help them with some of their soft costs, and it helps their cash flow and it helps them survive the ups and downs of starting a business. And also, the main thing about it is that you're probably getting a better retail store. You're getting more quality display cabinets. You're getting some real thought in a higher defined retail shop. That's why it allows for soft costs for some design consultant work as a proposed use.
I like them all, Ellen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought the
Thank you very much.
I think under the loan program, some of the comments you made, I think are really good. I think we do have to have a committee that kind of looks at that. I think there's some value that comes with that, especially with new businesses, just to make sure that they really understand all the components that really goes into opening a new business, especially if we're gonna be matching $20,000. I like some of the things on the repayment piece. Of course, if people go out of business, I mean, it's going to be pretty hard to generate the repayment if there's really no revenue to go after. So those are some of the things that I think as you go through this, there's some really good ideas to this, and I think we just got to tweak a few things. But the overall plan, I think, is really good.
We put a clawback in the sign also if they move to another community and take the sign with them, that they have to pay us for the sign. So that was the other clawback that was written in. So if we won't want their sign. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, number 5, discuss RFQ for wayfinding. This looks like it's phase 1. Donna, is that true? It's Ellen again.
Yeah, I wrote this. So.
Thank you.
Okay. So Roger Brooks was here, and thank you. Tell me again how I do it. Is it the top button? Okay. Roger Brooks came, and there was the 2017 Branding Development and Marketing Action Plan was created, and one of the recommendations was to create a roadway and pedestrian wayfinding system. And so what this RFQ does is it seeks a firm or individual with expertise in civic wayfinding. And it first wrote it to include a company that could also make the signs, and did a little investigation, and that's not always, you won't find the expertise in one person or in one company. So we broke it into 2 phases. So first off, why should we even do this? The current signage is inadequate. It's not always visible. The boundaries of the city, of the village, have expanded. You know, we want to make sure we're welcoming people at our gateways. We're sending them to the major destinations they're here for, and that's not just downtown. It's a lot of it is downtown, but it's all our cultural events, major shopping, the convention center, the amphitheater, Odyssey. There's places that Tinley Park is known for, and we want to make sure folks can get there easily and just enhance their visit when they're here. It goes with the tourism initiatives that the village is really putting in place. So the purpose is to increase the ease of visiting. It includes wayfinding downtown as well as on site at, say, the convention center or the amphitheater, so that when people are here, they know where to go, where to find the bathrooms, changing stations, things like that. Here's just a small sample of the type of signage. In the RFP draft that you had, I've indicated, a greater list of possible sign types and actual destinations. But the phase 1 would be to first assess what we have, identify who's coming to town and what their needs are, what their limitations are, what kind of communication they need. One of the comments made in this was, not everybody has cell phones. If grandma comes, can she get here without her GPS on her phone? And so we want a system that you can pull into town and then know where to go to get to your destination, so that the signage is carried through. You don't get off the interstate and see one little arrow and then you're like, okay, where do I go after this? The concept of destination hierarchy and content gets into what are we going to direct folks to. So village buildings, tourism destinations, folks are coming here for sporting events, the library, the Vogue Visual Arts Center. In the RFP, we have listed on page 10 several of, a good list of what we think is a good start to talk with a consultant, but we'd like them to tell us what should the content be in the program, and what's the hierarchy means. What gets the really big signs, what get the smaller signs, what just gets the little metal sign on a pole. You've got a hierarchy in size and style and investment. And then where do we need those? And then we start to design it. And we want a firm that can design for that variety of signs and give us design standards and specifications, and then give us probable cost. That last one's really important because we're not going to be able to afford to install the signage this year. When we get into phase 2, we need to know, okay, that gateway sign could cost us $100,000. All the little metal signs, we can make them here in the village sign shop. That's $20 each. We need to have probable cost estimates so we can budget in future years. And that would be phase 2. And that would be preparing all the actual construction documents, releasing bidding documents for any signs we install, getting them fabricated. Site preparation, are they going to be on private property or public property? Will we need utilities or water? Are we going to have any water features? And the actual installation. But this is just for phase 1. So it's designing the system, designing the graphics, and getting an idea of the signs, their content, and their cost.
Are we going to look at other towns that have done this? I mean, there's some good towns that have really done a nice job with this, and, you know, kind of just look at some of the, I mean, there's some towns that have done well with the signage that they've done, especially with the destination pieces and, you know, knowing where Village Hall is, knowing where the restaurant areas are. It'd be good that if we looked at, you know, some other towns that have done this.
I did pull some of the other, some RFPs and stuff from other folks as I wrote this. One of the things we're asking for, I'll move forward, in the evaluation factor, we want to know their design quality through examples that these consultants have done in other towns. We want to know their expertise, and I'll call it proven and equal. So that means mid-sized communities like Tinley Park with all the tourism amenities. There's immense tourism amenities here that not many towns have. So we want to know that they've designed wayfinding systems for that. They're complete capabilities, meaning can they take it from design all the way to the cost, probable cost estimate, and then references and workload. Do they have the time to give us for what we need to get our project? But you're right, we're hoping that through the RFP that we're also going to learn from just the folks that respond. There's two types of firms that we'll send this out to if you give us the approval to send it out. The first, our designers, Roger Brooks had given us a list of suggested companies. He himself does not do this, but they're civic wayfinding companies, and that's all they do. And then the other is you get a lot of the design professional groups like Lakota or Hitchcock, and they're landscape architect type folks, and they do wayfinding signage. A lot of the communities on the north side of the Chicago market have used those kinds of folks. So yes, I agree, we need to look at others. Okay. And then this was our timeline. If you're willing to have us release this, we would put it out by the end of the week and ask for like a 3-week turnaround, trying to get things moving along the lines that were set in the marketing plan.
Great.
Very nice. Thank you, Ellen. I would like to move forward with the RFQ.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion. Thank you.
This timeline would be helpful too for the budget process as well.
Right.
So,
all in favor?
All in favor? I'm sorry. Thank you. Number 6, discuss rental of holiday market tent. Donna?
Yes, indeed. We're already preparing for our 13th annual Holiday Happenings Weekend. It is December 1st through 3rd. So as part of that, for those of you who've been there, know we rent a very large tent that we put up in the Southwest Metro lot at the Oak Park Avenue station. And usually we've been ordering a 40-foot wide, which is our limitation going north and south, by 200-foot tent, and expanded a couple years ago to add on a 30 by 90 tent. So there are 2 Chicago area providers that we're aware of that have this 200-foot clear span tent. And so we got some quotes from them, and the quote from Party Time came in at $20,155. And so we're recommending that we move forward with them. And with your approval, I'll put that on the agenda for the November 7th meeting. The plan would be to install it on the Wednesday before, November 29th, and then it would be down by the following Monday. These costs are offset by approximately $9,000 in sponsorship and booth fees. And by way of the event, it kicks off that weekend with the tree lighting ceremony on Friday evening, and then Saturday and Sunday we have our full lineup with not only the holiday market, but our photos with Santa. We have a dozen performances that are scheduled for the weekend. We have ice carvings, the horse-drawn carriage rides, carousel, the toy lamp parade on Saturday, and then the parade of lights finishes up the weekend on Sunday. So this is a great collaborative event. We get excited about it every year. Lots of positive feedback, lots of participation by all kinds of community groups and volunteers and all kinds of good stuff.
Super, thank you.
One quick question. You've been doing it forever, I know. Have we ever looked into buying a tent? It seems like if we're renting it every year, maybe it's been 15 years or something, right?
13.
Yeah. I just was wondering if we looked into it, like how much it costs.
Good idea.
Yeah, we can definitely look into it, coordinate with our Public Works Department.
Kevin will love to store it.
Well, I don't know if we could do it this year, but certainly.
No, I mean, I know, but we could ask Kevin Murkowski if that's possible to
And then the idea of potentially
put it somewhere.
Move it into the plaza too. We might be making some modifications there once we have a plaza.
That's true. We have more issues, more fun things coming up.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to go with party time and put it on the next meeting if that's okay with you guys. I don't know if you need a motion for that or.
Yeah, we move to the next meeting.
Move to
I'll
the
make a
board
motion.
meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The party's on. And last one, but not number 7, discuss ordinance regarding the creation of a standalone branding and marketing commission.
Last but not least, we are, as you know, with our branding initiative, last year we created a brand leadership team that essentially was set up as a subcommittee of our Main Street Commission. And you know, they have a specific function to more or less act as the voice of the brand and work, you know, hand in hand to advocate for the brand and help fulfilling our recommendations that are in that action plan that we have. So at the time it was created, we, like I said, set it up as part of the Main Street Commission. At the time, there were 7 Main Street commissioners. 3 of them opted to participate on the brand leadership team. But, you know, it's become a little bit burdensome because of the amount of meetings that we have been having, both on the branding side and then on the Main Street Commission, and it's kind of a lot to put on these volunteers. So would like to recommend that the brand leadership team be spun off into a standalone commission of its own that would more or less have the focus of branding and marketing oversight. And so we outlined a couple potential objectives for them, which would be to assist in increasing the local tax base and improving the quality of life in Tinley Park by supporting and expanding the village's music brand through the arts, culture, and events held within the village, and also to encourage, assist, inform, and make recommendations to the village board and staff on matters pertaining to the marketing of Tinley Park and its current prospective residents, businesses, and tourists. So right now we have a very robust group with a lot of with expertise. Yeah, from our downtown, from our chamber, from our tourism attractions, and from our entertainment areas and schools and colleges. So actually we would not recommend that we make any changes there. We would suggest that we keep the existing members. And of the 3 commissioners that are remaining on the existing Main Street Commission, 1 of them is no longer on the commission. The 2 that it retain right now would be staying with the branding. So there are 3 new commissioners that were appointed last May, and the thought is that we would bring 4 more to the table for you for consideration for appointment. So
Well,
I did put a
again,
sample for you.
this is Jake's, the Mayor Vandenberg who appoints people. Is that?
It'd probably be the similar, like all your commissions, you'd have mayoral appointment with advice and consent of the board.
So before us was only to combine these 2 and make a separate one, or does he have to weigh in on that?
What I think Don is asking you guys for, and we've already have a draft.
Yeah.
You'll forward up an ordinance for full board approval. That ordinance will be twofold. One will repeal the old subcommittee, and then you'll create this new commission. You'll have all their powers and duties in there, and you'll have their how you appoint those people. If you have the folks ready to go, you can probably do it all at once. That's generally how this is done.
That sounds good.
Create the commission, appoint the people afterwards, and let them get going.
Very good. Thanks, Pat.
I, for one, think if you've got people willing to serve and, that energy, we could sure use them. There's a lot to do here.
I agree, Mike. It's not easy to come here and take time out of the busy day and schedule, and we're lucky to have all the people have input that live here.
Yes, we are.
So, sounds good.
Thanks, Don.
Great, thank you very much.
Recommend it forward to the board, right? Right to the board meeting.
All in favor?
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
You got it. We'll have it on your next board agenda.
All right. Any comments from the board? I just want to say we could vote for the Harmony Square now, right? It's on the website?
Yeah, please.
So everyone, please vote.
It's on the website, so yeah, please take a survey.
And also, Hailstorm Brewery, are we doing anything special for them?
We're trying to line something up with the chamber for a while.
Very good. I'd like to know if we want to receive, or can we receive any comments from our public?
Sorry, I'm back.
Don't say that.
The Oak Park Playbook?
Yes.
When is the implementation geared towards? Any time frame? 3 months, 6 months?
It's got to be after the budget.
Yeah.
So not until next May? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot in it.
So my math is correct. Depending upon how it's decided, one business could potentially receive $100,000. Is that correct?
That's what we're asking for feedback on, if it should be limited, like one grant per business.
Mhm.
We don't want them all to go to one building, but to spread them out.
Right.
I think,
Your point's well taken,
Yeah,
because
the devil's
that's
gonna
one of
be
the
in the
things that I
details
have, I think we want to spread it as much as we can, the opportunity for people. Just the question is, what is the right number? You know, what is the right amount that they would be able to grab?
Okay.
we
And
try to
obviously,
make it fair and based on merit and, you know, the work that they put in.
Right.
It's going to be tricky to do that, but I think with time and work, we should be able to come up with something. Hopefully.
potentially, I missed, did you state about how much monetarily per year in amounts to be given out?
$350.
$350,000.
The goal would be to do 20 by 2020.
That's depending on what they use, Pat.
We still got to look at the budget, though, too. That may be a pipe dream. Who knows?
Yeah.
Only
Per-
because some of
Per
them-
grant? For all 5 of those points, no more than 350, or no, program, sorry, no more than $350,000 total in grant money. Okay. Per year. And I think you may all have just misunderstood where I was going with this. Before one penny is spent and given out to any business, those 5 priority locations for LPR cameras better be funded first. This is outrageous that you would put these businesses and give them money before the village's safety. I will push this at every single meeting. You're talking about money coming out of a TIF and out of the general fund. What about us? Spend it on us. Spend it on the safety. I'm all for progress. I am all for helping businesses. I look forward to Oak Park being improved, Oak Park Avenue. But our safety comes first. Fund those 5 locations, and I'll stop coming up to the mic.
I just wanted to, who was on the Main Street Commission? Is that just businesses? Okay. So I would hope that this would probably also go through somebody else besides just the businesses, because it's for the businesses, right? And then is there going to be, the only thing I would want to know, is there any, if it's loans or if it's 100% giveaway, is there a time period they have to stay in that business? Because I'd hate for them to take all this money and then do what they need and sell it and make all their money.
So if you looked at the piece they gave us tonight, there's, in some of them, there's a 3-year payback. So if they get X dollars, they have to pay back X in the first year, which is 100%, and it goes down from that. So those are one of the things I brought up earlier that we would just have to look at to kind of say, if they left, you know, first off, how do we get it? So there's some things that I think us getting our arms around it right now, there's some questions I think we all have that I think we got to come back.
And not to say I love the idea of putting it into it. I think we need to do it. I think it's a great way to encourage this. I just think as long as there's rules and there's payback and it's constantly getting funded back somehow. Thanks.
Anyone else? I'd like to adjourn the Economic Development and Marketing Committee.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.